Hello there, this is the new HDMI video switcher unit from CineTreak. It's called the Stream 1. They have made video switchers before, of course. I've even reviewed at least one of them on this channel before. But this is the new one. I think they've had a little look round at what the competition are doing and said, let's see if we can improve on that. And this is what they've come up with. In the interest of full disclosure, they've sent me this device for free. They're not paying me to make this. It's not an ad for them. They haven't told me what to say. They don't get to see the video before it goes out. But yes, they did send me the device. Now, to be honest, I have no use for this. It's no benefit to me to have it. I will probably find a worthy home for it to donate it to once I've finished with the review. But just so you know, yes, I was sent this. But all opinions will be my own. What I'm going to do in the video is start with just having a little look around the device. Then I will demo some of the functions of it, not all of them, because a lot of it is very standard video switching that you'd expect a device to do, but I'll show you some of the bits and bobs that I found particularly interesting. And then I'll also go through one or two bits that I either didn't get on with or I think could do with improving, and so on and so forth. I imagine by the time we've finished all that, it will be quite a long video, so settle back. Let's start with having a little look around it. First of all, it's teeny tiny, isn't it? Like a lot of these things. It reminded me when I got it out the box of unpacking as a child my Sinclair Spectrum. There was something about it in the packaging. I just got it out and thought, oh, it's like a Specky, especially with the keys and everything. But anyway, it's about that sort of size. And as you can see, it's got the usual switch things, a row of buttons to switch to air, a row of preview buttons, assorted little buttons here that bring up different bits of menus and keying and all that kind of thing. Little T-bar on the right, which has a nice smooth action. You've got a knob here and some buttons for pan, tilt, zoom control. I don't own any PTZ cameras. I couldn't test that, so we'll just have to take it as read that that works. And then you've got your fade to black, your instant switch, your mix button here for automated transitions, and then a very useful twiddly and push in button and a menu button which gets you into all the menus. On the sides, you've got a fan vent there and a fan vent there. It does have a fan. I'd say it's a bit loud, but then I've never yet met a fan that was quiet enough for me. You'll notice also there is an SD card socket, and you can load up new firmware from that, as well as loading up images that go into the keyers, and you can record the output of the device onto the SD card as well. And also, interestingly, there's two USB sockets on the back. One of them is for you to take the output of the mixer and plug it into something like OBS. The other one you can plug a USB stick into, and again you can also record to that USB stick. So you have a choice of stick or card as to where you want to record the output to. And with those recordings you can set the bit rates and also the frame rates. It's very, very configurable like this. Like, dare I mention the OC products, a lot of the stuff on this is very, very configurable. For example, you'll notice it's got two HDMI outputs. What a blessing it is to have the flexibility of two HDMI outputs. You can have one for program, for example, and one for multi-view. But even better, talking about flexibility, you can set in the menus what you want those to be. So program doesn't have to be program, it can be preview, it can be input 1, it can be input 4. Equally, the aux output can be multi-view, it can be program. You just go in and you say, well, I want that output to be this input or this setting. So incredibly flexible. And there's another little perk of that, which I'll just briefly mention. On the top left of the device here, underneath the power button, there's a button marked MV, multi-view, and that actually toggles the aux output between two settings. So you've kind of got three outputs off two HDMIs. So for example, if you want to go somewhere and you want to just take a small amount of kit with you and just one monitor for what you're doing, you can plug that monitor into the aux and set it up to be a full-scale program output or multi-view, and you just toggle between them using that little button on the front. So if you want to sit back and see your output in full and just switch it like as if you were using an A10 Mini, just switch without seeing the multi-view, you can do that. And then you think, oh, I need to look on the multi-view for something, or I need to change a setting. Toggle that and it will switch back to that output being the multi-view output, whereupon you can access the menus. And it's that, I love that kind of ingenuity. That's a really helpful thing that helps you take a small setup and just toggle between them. So you've kind of got the three outputs on the two. What else? Oh yes, inputs. You've got the four HDMIs on this version, but there are different versions of this where you can have two HDMIs and 2 SDIs, and there's one where it's 4 SDIs. So whatever your configuration happens to be, there will surely be some version that is right for you. And in terms of these, the first 2 will accept a signal up to 4K, and the next 2 HD. The whole device is, I should mention, HD in terms of its output. It's not a 4K. I mean, you'd have to pay a lot more even at the moment for a fully 4K switcher, but it will accept 2 4K inputs in the first 2 inputs, HD on the others, and they can be 25, 30, 50, 60p. I plugged all my cameras in without any problems. The first one happened to be 4K, plugged it into input 1. It saw it, scaled it down to HD, not a problem. And then I plugged in various other things, and again, not a problem with that at all. The other neat thing this does is that with a switch of something in the menus, the whole thing then operates in portrait mode. So if you are trying to stream to TikTok, or what else does portrait? I suppose Facebook, Instagram. I have not yet reviewed another of these mixers that will do portrait, but literally you press the button in the settings and everything, the menu, the interface, the whole thing, turn your monitor through 90 degrees, and now you are streaming in portrait mode. You can stream, by the way, the Ethernet on the back there. It's not Wi-Fi, so you plug the Ethernet into a router, and that router talks to the internet however you want it to. And having done that, you can stream to 2 destinations, so Facebook and YouTube or whatever. You just give it your RTSP stream address and stream key, and there's a button here, there it is, marked stream. Push that and it will start encoding and streaming to those. I have tested that on YouTube and it worked without any problem at all. Again, you can tell it what bitrate and what frame rate you want it to output at. So let me see what else we've got on the back here. Power supply there, it's 12 volts, couple of amps I think. You've got 2 little microphone inputs there and a headphone jack. I'll tell you now, I tried 2 sets of headphones on this. One is my Sony MDR, what are they, MDR 7506, something like that. I don't have them to hand, but I think you know the standard Sony monitoring headphones, and also a really cheap pair of JVC kind of 20 quid headphones. Neither of them would this drive sufficiently. I couldn't hear anything in the headphones, even with this set to maximum output, everything. So I don't know quite what's up with that. It's probably something to do with impedances. I don't understand impedances, but I tried 2 sets of headphones and I couldn't hear anything out of it. So that was a downside to start with. But that is pretty much the device. So now I will demo some of those features. All right, this is what it looks like when you switch it on. It lights up, flashes the lights a bit, the fan comes on. You see the logo on the multi-view output, and then you end up with the multi-view output to look at, which is the familiar format. The top left corner is the preview screen, top right corner is what you're actually transmitting. Below that you have 4 individual HDMI camera inputs. Input 1 will pop up in a second when the computer realizes that it's actually attached, which it will in a second, hopefully. You've also got bottom left an auxiliary input. You've got a pattern, which can be a JPEG you load into the system. And there we go, the computer has realized it has an output. And then bottom right of the screen, you've got some very clear information. I must say, it's very easy to read this, which is about your streaming, your recording, your audio channel recording settings, time and date, what logos you've got set into the logo store, what your current automatic mix is if you use the auto transition function, and if you have PTZ cameras plugged in, information about those as well. Now I don't have any PTZ cameras, so I can't show you that, but you can see what is currently set up there. So it's a very clear multi-view screen, and as you can also see, the individual channel inputs have audio meters, as well as the main program out having audio meters as well. So that is all very good and clear and easy to use. Now on the unit itself, you've got the usual top row of buttons for switching directly to the output between cameras 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as your auxiliary output and a pattern which you can preload in the menus. And then on the bottom here, you've got a set of buttons for enabling you to toggle through your preview, again with aux and pattern and the 4 main HDMI inputs. You can work out what you want to send next to air, and having chosen something, you would then either cut to it using the cut button, you could press the auto button to do whatever fade or mix or cross dissolve you'd preset in the menus, or you can of course use the little joystick here, the little T-bar, to crossfade between the sources. All that is fairly standard stuff. You've also got other buttons on here, for example up here the audio settings, channels 1, 2, 3, 4, the 2 mics, aux and program, and you can pick any of those. Let's say you pick channel 1, it starts to flash, it's highlighted on the menus on screen, and you can then set the input level up and down using these buttons, and you can set to whether it's audio follows video, permanently on or permanently off. By default they are mostly set to audio follows video. Once you've finished setting it, you just press the button again and that setting is now saved for that channel. Again, same for if you want to change the microphones or the auxiliary input levels. They all work pretty much the same way. Other buttons you've got on here, there's a lot of keying this thing can do, upstream and downstream keying. So for example, you can preload 2 logos, which you can then have a little preview of. There we go, live streaming. And the other one is breaking news. But you can set those to whatever you want in the menus. You just load up a JPEG and you can put them to air by pressing the on air button. You've also got a downstream keyer, which I will come back to in a minute. Plus you have not 1 but 2 picture-in-pictures. So there's one picture-in-picture and there's another picture-in-picture. And again, you can put them on air if you like by pressing the on air button. You've also got Luma and Chroma Key. Again, I'll come back to demoing those in a second. Over here, 2 user buttons, which if you press and hold, recalls your user 1 settings. Let's bring something back. There we go. If you also just tap the buttons, it brings up the part of the menus to do with the user settings. And as you can see, you've actually got 6 user settings you can save to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can recall those user settings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can basically set the device up how you want for different scenarios, save it to those user databanks, and then recall it very straightforwardly. I also mentioned in my introduction this very useful MV multi-view button. So at the moment, the HDMI output set to aux is the multi-view output. But if you press this, it actually toggles to a full screen display of an output that you have selected in the menus, which I think I must have set up to be the preview. In fact, I will just press menu and we'll go into that and show you how you set that up. There we go. And there we go, there is me, full size, hello, full size me, and I press the button again and it goes back to the multi-view. So that is quite handy. It means you only need to take 1 monitor with you, potentially, rather than 1 for multi-view and 1 for program output. As you've already seen, there are menus which can come up in the bottom right. You just press this menu button here and you get a whole load of different menus to do. For example, you can set what transition you want for when you use this auto button, and the duration and the softness of the edge and all that kind of thing, and dip to color and fade to color. You've got some audio settings here, which include, for example, on the inputs, a delay so that your HDMI audio can be synchronized up if you are also using the Mic 1 inputs as well, because sometimes there can be a delay on HDMI audio. So you might want to sync up the mic audio with your HDMI, and you can switch it from mic to line level if you're plugging in a mixer as well. The only trouble I found with this is that the headphones, even at maximum volume, I think I mentioned this again in my intro, it wasn't enough to drive either of 2 pairs of headphones I used, so you may need some, I'm guessing, low impedance headphones to be driven suitably by that. Now you have got 5 inputs on this device. There's 4 HDMIs and there's this 5th aux input, which you can see on the bottom left, and which I will just cut to there. At the moment it's blank, there's nothing in there. But if you go into this media option, you have the option of playing a local video file. If I toggle using the PTZ button here, you can switch it to look at videos on the SD card, and I happen to have some loaded up on the SD card. So if I click that one and select play, it will read that file off the SD card, and there is my countdown timer for live broadcast playing with a bit of music in the background as well. And if you press the play button once more, it will actually pause it, press again, and it will resume it. Plus, if you press and hold the play button, it brings up this somewhat peculiar system where you can tell it where you want to play from. It's a little bit imprecise, and even if you pause the video and you think, right, now I want to cue it up right back at the beginning again, as soon as you set it back to the start, it does go back to the start, but it starts playing it again. So if you actually want it paused at the start, you have to set it back and press pause very, very quickly, which is not entirely satisfactory. I'd rather have it queued up and ready to go, but never mind, you nearly get there. And then obviously when you do want it to play, you would just press the play button and off it goes. You can also define whether you want playback to be a single play or a list. There's some recording settings for your recording onto card or USB stick of the output, so you can set the bit rate and you can set the frame rate and the format and so on and so forth. Here's where you set the stream bit rate when you are pushing out your encoded program to YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So again, you can set the bit rate, the frame rate. You can say whether you want 1 or 2 streams to be switched on. So for example, 1 to YouTube or 1 to Facebook. There's also this pull stream. Now I don't have an RTSP stream source on my network, but if I did, it would turn up there. Equally, I don't have any NDI, so no NDI source found, but that is where it would pop up and you could select it. And you can also plug a webcam into one of the USB inputs, effectively giving you a 5th camera input straight into the device. I don't have it plugged in at the moment, but I have tried this and it does work, so that is all fine and good. Now, I mentioned these buttons here give us a load of keying options and that you can load up logos. There they are on the preview screen, but if you go into the menus and go into image, you can either set here the pattern, which is currently that one. In fact, if I just select it and pick another image and apply, it will load that pattern, and you should see, there we go, it changed very slightly. But you can also set some logos. So for example, if I click that, go onto my SD card, I have my Cruising the Cut logo, and I can assign that to be logo 1 or logo 2. Let's make it logo 1, and it's loading that from the card, and it will bring it in. And then you can say how big you want each logo. It offers you multiples of size, so that if we just turn these off. So there's logo 1. It's very small. Even at the moment with it set to its biggest size, I'm afraid I made that logo too small when I loaded it in. But if I make it down to ×1, you can see there it shrank. If I make it 0.4, it's absolutely tiny. And if I make it 1.4, again, there we go. There's your logo, which you can switch off and on like that. Now, if you want to move the logo position, you can either do it here, select that, and then use this joystick, but it's really quite finicky because it doesn't move much if you just toggle the joystick a tiny bit like that. The logo barely moves, so it's hard to be accurate. If you press and hold it down, it suddenly zooms all over the screen. So there is a better way of doing this. So get out of that, and then you long press hold the logo button until it flashes, and now you can use the knob to adjust it horizontally, and then you click and it changes to vertically. And this is much, much more accurate. And this was something that wasn't in the original firmware, and I complained about the joystick being too inaccurate, so they added this way of doing it with the knob. And you just keep pressing that and it toggles between horizontal and vertical. And when you've done and you've decided that's where you want the logo, just press the button again, and it is now at that position. And again, you can turn it on and off with the on-air button or whatever. It's worth pointing out that the logos and the downstream key are, as the name implies, all downstream of the switching. There's the logos, and if I cut, those logos stay on screen because they are downstream of the transitions. So that's logos. You've also got, I'll just turn those off, 2 picture-in-pictures. So if I just bring them up on the preview, there's picture in picture 1 and picture in picture 2, and you set those in the menus here. Pip, you can say what source you want picture in picture 1 to be, and if you watch it, you'll see it's changing as I move it. So we'll leave it at 1. You can say what size you want it to be, 1/8, 1/6, 1/4, 1/3, or you can make it a custom size, which I currently have as 40% wide and 20% high. You'll also notice that not only are you seeing it in the preview window, but if you look at the input source, the bit of the image that you are showing in that is reflected in the amount of image that is highlighted, if that makes sense. So when you go to crop, you can set the zoom and it defines how much of that image is going to be shown in your picture in picture. So it's very, very flexible, I think is what I'm trying to say. And you can also set the border, which as you can see at the moment is orange, but you could, I mean, let's make that a nice blue border or something. Over we go. And you can use the knob to adjust which bit of that blue you pick. Let's have something like that. And you can change how thick you want the border. So there we go. I've changed that. While we're in here, there's also this rather strange meeting mode. Now, I'm going to turn this on just to show you what happens. So if you select that and put it to program, you've got all 4 inputs over the top of whatever you're sending to program. And it's got different ways of laying it out. That's mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, and mode 4. They call this meeting mode. Presumably if there were cameras on 4 people there, you could all be superimposed over the top of a presentation or something. I don't really know what that's for, but I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments. So back to the picture in picture. Again, you can set the position using the joystick, and it's finicky because it suddenly zooms everywhere. But once again, if you don't like that, get out of that, press and hold the button until it flashes, and now you can adjust the size or horizontal position or vertical position, and then you just keep toggling until you have it as you like it. And it is much, much easier to do it with the knob, I find, than with the joystick. So we'll put that one there, and we'll put it up there. Lovely. And just press and hold the button again. Takes you out of that, and the picture in picture is now set there. Now when you cut, the picture in picture goes with it. So if you cut back and cut off, if you want the pip to stay on there, so for example, if one of those picture in pictures was me talking over some background of, I don't know, a computer game or something, but you wanted to cut away to a different image but keep yourself on screen, you'd want to have yourself loaded up both in the preview and the program window so that when you cut, it's the same. Or if you don't have it loaded up in the preview window, if you do direct cutting, again, you do stay on the screen with the pips. So it's quite flexible for what ends up showing on screen. Now I'm going to have a go at demoing the chroma key, and as you can see, I have got a green screen behind me, which I've had a go at. Well, it's reasonably well lit actually. The bit that isn't terribly well lit is me, but the green screen itself is. I might just move the camera. Let's put it there. And what I'm going to attempt to do, and I nearly always forget exactly how you do this, is superimpose that image of Norway over the green screen. So we need to go into the chroma key settings, and I will turn the chroma on. Hang on, let's get this right. I'll try and do it in the preview window. So let's turn the chroma on the preview, and the first thing you do is set the key source, which will be input 4, won't it? Because that is me with the green screen. Then you need to pick the chroma key color, And you can either do it with that color picker, which again uses the little joystick and the color thing, and you can see there on the preview window, it's just starting to pick up a bit of something. But the better way to do it is to go pick a color, and you get this little white color picker, and I will put that over a bit of the green screen so you know you're picking the definite green screen color, and press the menu button. That color is now locked in. Now when you go to similarity and fiddle with that a bit, here we go, I am starting to come in, and as you can see behind me here, there it is, the picture is being superimposed onto the green screen. If I turn the chroma off, there's the picture, turn the chroma on, and it is on my backdrop. Now there's a bit of fiddling you can do here with the similarity. Obviously, as you can see, as I turn that up, I've got a reflector here, which is obviously getting a bit of the green. In fact, if I turn that round, it's a white reflector, so that should be picking up some of the green, and I think it picked up more green when it was on the gold side. Anyway, the point is you fiddle with this setting to bring in as much of the chroma green screen as you can without letting too much of the background in. I mean, that's not bad, is it? For a very quick one. There's a bit of green fringing around my head. Yes, I can see that. Trying to do this while looking that way, while also looking that way. But let's turn that down a bit. Turn that down to as minimum as we can get away with. There's also a smoothing setting, which again, it just varies the edges of the chroma a bit. And you need to fiddle with both of those. But, I mean, doing that very quickly and bearing in mind I'm not lit, that's all right, isn't it? It's not, to be fair, it's not the best chroma keying I've ever seen. I think it could do with a little bit more refinement, in the algorithm, because you can see a little bit of fringing. There we go, around my hands and things. But if you do a bit of fiddling with it, you can pretty much get some sort of chroma going on. Just one thing to note, you see this background button here? This toggles it between being a conventional switcher where you've got program and preview, and you cut between them. If you toggle background off by pressing and holding it, then your preview is no longer functional. You're literally just a direct switcher using the top row of buttons. The whole preview thing goes away. But if you press and hold background, it comes back on to being more like a traditional TV switcher. So you've got the option of which way it works. And now I will attempt for the final demo to show you the downstream keyer, which I did say I would demo. What I'm going to do is put myself to air and turn on the downstream keyer. And the way I've got this set up is that I've got my computer running DaVinci Resolve outputting, at the moment, the image of Norway into input 1. But if I switch it to something else, you can see here I've got a name caption. If you're looking at input 1, in fact, I'll just bring input 1 up and then we can see it properly. So we've got a little animated name caption. Obviously, I'd like that name caption to come up over me or anyone else. And you could have any other graphic. I've got another graphic here. You see the sample words. And what we want is to superimpose that over the top of whatever output we have. So I'll leave it on the name caption. I nearly always forget how to do this and get the inputs the wrong way around. So just bear with me. But we go to downstream keyer. You want to set the input source to be, now is this the one we're showing or the one we're keying? I forget. I think we'll make it input 1. Oops, input 1. There we go, look. So we're keying input 1 over me. But we can refine that by changing the threshold at which it comes in. So if I turn that up, the black background of my key disappears, leaving only the graphics. And if you turn it all the way up, it doesn't key at all. But if we bring this down, I can actually get a little bit of my black background that I want on my name caption without keying me out. you have to alter both the threshold and the gain. Now I'm going to, again, if you change this, you can see how it's just affecting how things operate. I'm going to turn that down to nil, go back to threshold, turn that, I think I worked out that I need this, there we go. If I have this on 1, it darkens the whole thing, but if I put it on 2, and I have the gain on 1, I can actually have, even though the way this keyer works is it looks for anything black in the image you're sending it, and it keys through that. But if you set your black to 000, which is true black, but you set the black background on any graphics you want to 16, 16, 16, this is RGB values, well, in video terms, 16, 16, 16 is black, and anything below that is black. So by setting a background on a graphic to 16, 16, 16, it comes up as black on screen, but the keyer lets it through, if you see what I mean. And then I can have myself a little animated caption. Now, I'm only using DaVinci Resolve here to do this because I happen to have Resolve, but if you had some kind of program that did graphics to an HDMI output from your computer and you feed it into this, and I've fed it into input 1, but you could have it in the aux input or whatever, it means you can have on-screen graphics over the top of whatever you're transmitting. So, and you can see, you can just superimpose them over whatever, which I think is quite neat. And again, a little bit of fiddling around with it and you can get it all set up very well. So after all of that, what do I think of the CineTreak Stream 1? Well, it is a very compact but very full-featured little unit at a very reasonable price. It's got loads of inputs on the back, 4 HDMIs as you know, or there are the other versions I mentioned at the start with SDI. You've got that 5th auxiliary input, which can be both a webcam plugged into one of the USBs on the back, or an NDI, or a pulled RTSP stream. Admittedly, I could not test those. I have no such source to test it with, but let us assume that that works and that it is all good. So that's a very useful extra facility. And speaking of the USBs, of course, you have got the 2 on the back. One goes off to something like OBS. The other is an input for a memory stick, or as I say, a webcam if you want to use that as a 5th camera source. You've got the SD card on the side, which you can record your output to, and if you have plugged a USB memory stick into one of the USBs, you could record your output to that. You've got all the flexibility of the configuration options in the menus, which you can set pretty much anything how you like. You've got the picture-in-pictures, which are good and again configurable. You've got that downstream keyer enabling you to do graphics if you send them into an input from a computer or something. So yeah, it's fully featured. The only thing I would say is that compared to its obvious competitor, which is the OC Go Stream Deck, the OC unit allows you to do macros, which is to say you can program a sequence of button presses to be assigned to a macro button on the unit, whereas this doesn't do macros, but it does have the 6 user profiles. So you could set it up, for example, that user profile 1 is for client X. It's however you would normally do your broadcasts for that client, and then user profile 2 could be for client Y, and so on, and they can just be recalled very easily. So whether this is the right unit for you, as with all these things, it depends on your specific circumstances, and I just hope that watching this video has given you some insight as to whether this is the one for you or not. Thank you very much for watching. Cheerio.